Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Biblical Languages and Literature, and I appreciate your interest in this series on eschatology and apocalypse. This is the second video in this playlist, and I'll be, over the course of spring 2025, I'll be adding to this series. It's probably going to be a fairly long one because eschatology and apocalypse is such a big topic within Judaism. There are so many texts we'll need to consider. And then we want to work the New Testament in as well. And there's a lot of relevant apocalyptic and eschatological information in the New Testament. If you haven't seen the first video already, you might want to start there, and you can see the card up on your screen, and that will direct you to that video. Before we begin, please be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click the bell to be notified when I publish additional videos in this series. And be sure to like the video, and if you would, share it on social media so that others may learn about this channel as well. I really appreciate your support. And if you have any questions for me, you can put messages down in the down below, add a message or a question, or you can email me directly. You see my email address right on the screen there, so feel free to do that. And if you're ever in the Milford, Connecticut area and want to drop in to our church, we'd love to have you stop by. All right, so real quick review. Last time we talked about eschatology, and we said that the term eschatology comes from the Greek word eschatos, meaning end or last. And so eschatology is, properly speaking, it's the theological study of, or the theological investigation of the end times. And as part of our discussion, we talked about the various phases of prophecy in the Hebrew Scriptures. And I reminded you last time that I will use the terms Old Testament, Hebrew Scriptures, Hebrew Bible interchangeably. Even though I prefer the term Hebrew Bible, sometimes people are less familiar with it, and Old Testament can, at the very least, be a useful term there. All right, so the first phase of prophecy is pre-exilic prophecy, so before the Babylonian exile of 586 BCE, pre-exilic, so before the Babylonian exile. And pre-exilic prophecy had negative elements to it, often included something about coming destruction, God's punishment coming, right? And we looked at that in the book of Amos, and I think we took a look at Isaiah last time, took a look at a number of different texts. But in pre-exilic prophecy, there is also a positive side, even if it is less pronounced, and that is for promised restoration, promised restoration. So pre-exilic prophecy has coming destruction, its imminent destruction, and promised restoration. And the scope, and this is the important thing, the scope of pre-exilic prophecy is imminent. In other words, it's going to happen soon. Whatever the prophets are talking about, they don't see the events as being way off in the distant future. And so this idea that the pre-exilic prophets would have been thinking about Messiah, well, you'd want to look at those texts very carefully and ask yourself, is that really a contextual reading of the pre-exilic prophets or not? Now, we also referenced David Peterson's comments from his article on the eschatology of the Old Testament in the Anchor Bible Dictionary, where he writes, "The character of the day of Yahweh as a day of negative expectation resounds throughout the so-called classical prophets. In time, the negative picture of the day of Yahweh becomes so bleak that it sounds as if an entirely new eon will dawn, one of catastrophic punishment and of national annihilation, so especially the formulations of Amos, Zephaniah, and Ezekiel. Because the future foreseen by these prophets is so different from that which Israel had experienced and had expected, namely these unexpected eventualities, the forfeiture of national existence, the defeat of Zion, the devastation of the temple, and the loss of a monarch, such views are, not without reason, construed as eschatological, that is, final or of an end time." Notice how he defines the word eschatological, final or of an end time. Not the end of the world, but the end of a period. The picture drawn by the prophets out of the covenant curse scenario does mean an end to a prior mode of existence. Now, it would be warranted at this point, in light of Peterson's comments on the covenant curse formula, to consult Deuteronomy 27 and 28. Now this passage begins saying, "Now Moses and the elders of Israel commanded the people, saying, keep the whole commandment that I command you today. Keep the whole commandment that I command you today. And on the day you cross over the Jordan to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall set up large stones and plaster them with plaster. And you shall write on them all the words of this law when you cross over to enter the land that the Lord your God is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you. And when you have crossed over the Jordan, you shall set up these stones concerning which I command you today on Mount Ebal, and you shall plaster them with plaster. And there you shall build an altar to the Lord your God, an altar of stones. You shall wield no iron tool on them. You shall build an altar to the Lord your God of uncut stones. And you shall offer burnt offerings on it to the Lord your God, and you shall sacrifice peace offerings, and shall eat there, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God. And you shall write on the stones all the words of this law very plainly." And so this is a ritual ratifying God's covenant with Israel. This immediately follows with a section on the curses of the covenant. Now, in ancient Near Eastern times, what we call suzerain vassal treaties, a treaty between a conquering king and a defeated king, would have 6 major elements to them, one of which was the blessings and the curses of the covenant. And so Deuteronomy, as we'll probably talk about in some other video, is modeled, the book as a whole is modeled on suzerain vassal treaties in the ancient Near East. It's essentially a treaty between God, the conquering king, and Israel, the conquered, as it were. And so therefore, since Deuteronomy is a covenant, a suzerain vassal treaty or covenant between God and Israel, where he is viewed implicitly as the conquering king, it's only fitting that we have a section on blessings and curses. And so the section on blessings and curses begins this way. The text continues on in verse 9. "Then Moses and the Levitical priests said to all Israel, keep silent and hear, O Israel. This day you have become the people of the Lord your God. You shall therefore obey the voice of the Lord your God, keeping his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today." That day Moses charged the people, saying, "When you have crossed over the Jordan, these shall stand on Mount Gerizim to bless the people, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin. And these shall stand on Mount Ebal for the curse, Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali. And the Levites shall declare to all the men of Israel in a loud voice," and this is where the curses begin now, "Cursed be the man who makes a carved or cast metal image, an abomination to the Lord, a thing made by the hands of a craftsman, and sets it up in secret. And all the people shall answer and say, Amen. Cursed be anyone who dishonors his father or his mother, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed be anyone who moves his neighbor's landmark, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed be anyone who misleads a blind man on the road, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed be anyone who perverts the justice due to the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed be anyone who lies with his father's wife because he has uncovered his father's nakedness, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed be anyone who lies with any kind of animal, and all the people shall say, Amen. And as we scroll through this text, we see that there's one curse after the other. And it's not a short list. This section on curses concludes at verse 26, Cursed be anyone who does not confirm the words of this law by doing them, and all the people shall say, Amen. The text then transitions to the blessings, and that begins in chapter 28 and verse 1. And if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your herds, and the young of your flock. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. Verse 7, The Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before you. They shall come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways, and so on and so forth. And I encourage you as I'm scrolling through here just to survey the blessings. And it concludes with verse 14, "And if you do not turn aside from any of the words that I command you today to the right hand or to the left to go after other gods to serve them." So all the blessings are contingent upon loyalty to Yahweh the suzerain. But it should not be lost on us that after the section on cursings and then the section on blessings, we now return for additional curses. Verse 15, "But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, or be careful to do all his commandments and his statutes that I command you today, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed shall be the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your ground, the increase of your herds and the young of your flock. Cursed shall you be when you come in, and cursed shall you be when you go out." And as we scroll through this text, what we find is that there is a disproportionate amount of attention given to curses vis-a-vis blessings. And you can see how the text just goes on and on and on with one curse after the other. And let's continue in verse 45. "All these curses shall come upon you and pursue you and overtake you until you are destroyed, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord your God," and so on. And it continues to go on and on and on. Verse 51, "It shall eat the offspring of your cattle and the fruit of your ground until you are destroyed. It also shall not leave you grain, wine, or oil, the increase of your herds, or the young of your flock, until they have caused you to perish." And it continues on further in verse 52. And I'll just scroll through this in case you want to pause and look at it. And just when you think it's ended, it continues on further still. The final verse being, "And the Lord will bring you back in ships to Egypt, a journey that I promised that you should never make again. And there you shall offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but there will be no buyer." So I know it took us a while to go through that text in Deuteronomy there, but Deuteronomy 27 and 28 is really essential for understanding what Peterson is talking about here. The final sentence, he says, "The picture drawn by the prophets out of the covenant curse," right? That's what we just talked about. "The picture drawn by the prophets out of the covenant curse scenario does mean an end to a prior mode of existence." And you can see that the covenant curse finished with God sending or threatening to send the people back to Egypt from whence they came. And so that's what we mean by an end to a prior mode of existence. If they break the covenant of God, the national period will come to an end, and he threatens to send them back to Egypt. Interestingly, they ended up in Babylon, but that's for another time. So when we're talking about pre-exilic prophecy, and again, just pre-exilic prophecy, it's fair to say that thus, with regard to the pre-exilic prophets, eschatology does not mean the end of the cosmos, but an end of the current world system. And so if you take a minute to observe and just compare and contrast in your mind the difference between Revelation and Deuteronomy with the blessings and the curses that you find in both of them, they're very, very different in terms of their purview. And so next time, we'll look a little bit at Revelation just to help further elucidate that comparison or the contrast. And then we'll get into post-exilic prophecy. And this is all leading us towards apocalyptic in the book of Daniel, and then the apocalypses found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the book of the Watchers in 1 Enoch, chapters 1 through 36, and that sort of thing. All right, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please be sure to click the bell so you get notified when I post new videos. And I would very much appreciate your sharing this video on social media. I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody.